I liken it to like a tree, right? Over time, a tree just keeps growing, and sometimes you need to trim back the branches. And so that's what we're looking at here.
That is Representative Jeff Ehlers from Meridian, the co-chair of Idaho's DOGE Task Force, talking about the purpose of the Gem State's Department of Government Efficiency, a task force tasked with studying and eliminating inefficiencies within Idaho's departments and divisions. Something that hasn't been done in depth since 1970, when Idahoans voted to revise the state constitution to cap the number of agencies within the executive branch at 20. Well, there are currently more than 220 divisions under those 20. Monday was their third meeting, in which they talked about things like the budget holdback, state employees working from home, and the history and funding of Medicaid expansion. Then at the very end of the nearly 3-hour meeting, co-chairs Ehlers brought up a list of agencies, divisions, commissions, whichever, that his task force will be focused on over the next few years with regard to elimination, reduction, or consolidation. He came up with this list, he says, because they were either a small staff, or they've been growing too big, or they've outgrown their mission, or there could be redundancy. About 75 of the 220 or so in Idaho, Representative Ehlers came up with 4 categories, those that could likely see legislation this next session, what he called low-hanging fruit, like merging the Bingo Raffle Advisory Board with the Idaho Lottery Commission, or eliminating the Idaho Honey Commission. They were a group of ideas proposed by the governor's office that could use a little more work, like combining the Division of Liquor with the Division of Lottery, or the Commission on Aging with the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and the Developmental Disabilities Council. There were a dozen ideas from his legislative colleagues, and finally those he said needed further review. 46 of those, including the Capitol Commission, the Idaho Horse Board, the Racing Commission, or the Office of Species Conservation. But also on that list for further review was the Division of Veterans Services and the Veterans Affairs Commission, something that might pique the interest of Idaho's 125,000 or so veterans. Any sort of reduction or elimination of services for veterans, well, that would be a big deal in Idaho. But Representative Ehlers tells us that's where a lot of assumptions are being made.
So nowhere on that list for further review does it say something like eliminate. It's for us to look at and examine. One of the outcomes of the review may be they're functioning just fine, they're being efficient. So, nobody's saying on there we're just going to completely eliminate veteran services. In fact, one of the reasons those ones specifically are on there is potentially, are they overlapping? And would the veterans be better served by having both of those under one body instead of divided? That would make, in my mind, a more efficient government and more efficient way to conduct business for the citizens. What if we get in there and maybe there's an excessive amount of administration? I don't know. I haven't looked at it yet, so that's to be determined. What if instead of spending that much money on administration, it was spent in the care and service of veterans? I think veterans might be happy to see that.
So we decided to ask a veteran who also happens to be state council president of the Vietnam Veterans of America. And while veterans would be all for efficiency, as it currently stands, they tell us Idaho's veteran services, the agencies, they already lack the staff to be efficient.
No, they're behind.
How so?
Well, we have just in the Joining Forces group that was organized by Idaho Division of Veteran Services. They have 9 regions in the state of Idaho, and they have 3 people operating those 9 regions because they don't have enough people on staff.
Paul Sherman tells us there are 600 nonprofits dedicated to helping Idaho veterans, a large contingency of what is already needed to fill in the gaps left behind at the state and federal level, so they're not already doing what they should be doing. Representative Ehlers reminded us today that this list of 46 in his further review category, well, that could be years away from seeing any advancement. And even if they were to move forward, any of the 75 on this list would have to go through the legislative process, the full process. That would be a recommendation from the task force, a lawmaker to draft a bill, a committee hearing with public input, then it has to pass both chambers, and then a signature from the governor. Idaho's DOGE Task Force will meet one more time before the next legislative session, so we should see what recommendations, if any, come out of that.